I'm Ellie Sachs here with Keely and Zack. Today we'll be discussing banned books, and the question is whether or not high school should be able to ban books and whether or not they should be banned in general outside of high school.
I think certain books should be banned and not should be at an easy access for kids in high school and younger. There are certain guidelines that have to be taught to kids in education, and the same way should be for books that certain things should be allowed and certain things shouldn't be.
I get that, and I do believe that a school board should be able to make that decision, but I think it should be flexible.
I think the states should make a decision.
Yeah, the states
I
should?
agree.
I think that the school board should be able to make it based on the students and the parents that the students have, and I don't think that the high schoolers need to be as sheltered as people think they need to be.
I think there's, the saying that stay a kid as long as you can, because once you grow up, you can't go back, and I think sheltering kids from some things isn't a bad thing.
But also, how long do you shelter them for? In high school, once they're out of high school, they're in the real world and they can't be sheltered. So it could be kind of a culture shock if you don't.
I don't think it'll be a culture shock as much as they'll learn quick how things work. And kids aren't as sheltered as people think they are, or as their parents think they are necessarily, because kids learn things in so many different ways without getting it from their parents necessarily, and I don't think it'd be a culture shock.
If they already know it, then why do you need to shelter them from it in school?
I feel like because there's just there's not a time and a place for it. How does reading that book help you learn? It doesn't.
I understand that, which is why I think that the school board, if there's a problem with the book, the librarian chooses the books and what goes in the library, and she has the responsibility of choosing the right books, and usually most do. But if a parent has a problem, they can bring it to the school board and they decide, because we elect them to make those kind of decisions.
So then what does that mean, though, if their parents don't like the books that are in their library and they don't want their kids reading them, they're just going to move schools?
No, they're going to talk to the school board, and the school board will make the decision on whether or not it needs to be banned.
So then you're banning books?
That's what I'm saying. I just think it should be more flexible in that way, where it's not a whole state situation where no high schools can have this certain book. It's a decision on that from the school board for that school based on the students.
Then every school maybe has a different learning curriculum if it's with books that have to deal with the learning.
I
I'm thinking more of, I'm not saying just the classroom, I'm thinking more of the books in the library.
Specifically too.
I feel like it should be even across the state, because then it'd be way too crazy. Some schools you can read whatever you want, and other ones is super restricted.
Then it goes into education.
I think that a lot of the books in the curriculum are pre-approved they're always pre-approved by the state because of the curriculum, and I understand that those usually shouldn't be banned. But I believe that if there's always the same books in each library, then that's limiting the amount of books that people can have. We do not have all the same books that other libraries have, so it's kind of restricting them.
I feel like when you say limiting, you're meaning that it limits a ton of books. I feel like
it does.
It doesn't limit the books that are so necessary for kids to read.
I'm just thinking it shouldn't be the state that has the same exact books in each library.
I feel like banning books doesn't limit their education capability.
I'm not saying the banned books right now. I'm saying the state shouldn't be able to, each high school have the same exact library. They can have the same books, maybe,
then everyone
if that's
has
what you
the
guys
same
are saying.
education.
I understand that. I just don't think they should have the same exact books in each library, because there's so many different other books that people can read.
You're talking about school. You're talking about school libraries, so not libraries in town.
I know.
Why should school libraries have most of the same books?
I know, but if it's not banned
so
books,
all kids have equal opportunity.
I know, but why should you have banned books that don't need to be banned from that library? If it's a simple children's book, but another school doesn't have it, why can't this school have it if they have the access to it?
Okay, well, they can have it as long as it meets guidelines that it shouldn't be banned.
Okay, so then each library won't have the same amount of books. Won't have the same exact books.
If there are certain guidelines, they can have as many books as they want, as long as they don't contradict the guidelines for what should be banned.
And I think we have that now, and it's not exactly banning the books. I think this term banning goes more against the general idea outside of high school. When countries ban books,
too, about what they're banning. I think there should be a revision of what they're banning, because what's been banned before was things with race, as to where we can talk about race now for it isn't a thing that's discouraged or a thing that's you can talk about it and learn about it and it's okay.
I believe just where there's a stop, where there's simple books written for teenagers that do have some sex scenes or like drug uses and stuff like that, and that's a big reason of why books are being banned in certain places. So
But then
why
those,
should,
but see, those
where's
books
the
shouldn't
cutoff
be,
for those
I
kind
feel
of
like
things?
those books shouldn't
if
be
those
allowed.
books, I don't think they should be allowed in school, but if like the kid wants to read them, they could go outside of school and read it on like their own time, but not in like a public school.
Okay,
I
but
feel like
even
this- yeah.
but it's still the same elements that are in the curriculum books that we're sometimes reading.
How is that in our curriculum books?
I read a book in 8th grade that dealt with someone dying in the 9/11, and it went back to not a foreshadow. It went back into the past, and their grandparents literally had sex.
Okay.
They have explicit scenes in books that we're reading in the curriculum, and so why? I understand
I
like
think-
50
but,
Shades
okay.
of Grey and those kind of books shouldn't be in the library, but it's not exactly banning them. It's not buying them in the first place.
But there should be those that are banned because we don't always know teachers, you don't always know people that are hired, you don't always know what everybody's gonna do,
Yeah.
and that's why it's
And
banned.
that's
So
why-
those
Because
can't even happen
I
as
feel
an
like-
accident. It's
because
just setting up a situation.
Everybody's opinion on like what books are wrong is completely different.
I agree.
So like
States should set guidelines in order for schools to already follow
And
the
they
rules
do.
and not even make any.
I do think they do have guidelines, but I don't think that's banning a specific book exactly.
Why?
They're just not allowed to buy it.
So that's banning it from the library, so they're not allowed to buy it.
I don't see it as banning, I guess. I see banning more of the general idea, like a country bans a book,
I
where
think
it's
they
not
should
allowed.
I think a revision could be done of what should be banned, because I think some things that are banned shouldn't necessarily have to be banned. But I definitely think like anything about sex doesn't need to be talked about in elementary kids. Like that's ridiculous.
And I don't think it is.
High school, I know, but like that one book that we looked up, because we always do research before we talk, and one of the books was like teaching kids about sex, but it was for like younger elementary kids. I don't think that should be allowed. I feel like there's no
But
reason
we
for
looked
that.
up a little
Yeah,
bit
I
more, and
agree.
it's not just about sex. It's about like gender and those kind of things too.
still though,
And it wasn't like
even though it has
explaining
that
what's.
in it,
That's
I don't
getting
think it
kids
should
almost
be.
And it was
into
towards the-
politics too
it's
at
toward-
like a younger age.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because they don't need to
They should
be
know what's
wrapped
going
up
on in the
it.
world if they're interested.
yeah, but they're
And
so
second
easily
and third
influenced.
grade, yeah, that's a
So
good
are
point.
teenagers.
Not as influenced as
This
like
is
a fourth and
first
fifth
grader.
grader.
I could go tell a first grader that Donald Trump is the best thing ever, and he'd believe me.
Well, what about if they're learning about the presidents? That's still political.
Okay, but there's a difference between learning about presidents as political and learning about political issue controversies.
I'm not saying I feel like they could have political books if they're written for that age. They're not going to read like a huge chapter book about like Hillary,
Well, yeah,
like Hillary Clinton's
But think
book.
of the book that we were talking about, like for a kid's book. Any kid's book that had to do. I feel like there shouldn't really have to be kids' book that need to deal with adult concepts. If they can't even, like, okay, teenagers can't vote, but like if they have literally no say and it doesn't really matter, why get them stressed? Like a part of being a kid is just having fun and not having to worry about that kind of stuff and just learning the basics, like symbols of life. You don't need to deal with all the arguing and all the, I feel like, controversies with that at like a young age. I guess if you want to and your parents are like, oh hey, you should read this
I
as like a
understand.
5th grader or something, and they're really interested, I think that's different. But I don't think it needs to be.
Yeah.
in the
I don't
library.
think there are
Yeah.
many like political books like that in the library as it is though.
I know. Usually the main concerns are ones like about drugs and stuff like that, and even things about drugs do not need to be.
I
in
understand like
elementary.
drug
I
use.
agree.
Doesn't need to be in elementary schools.
I get that. I don't think there should be ones about like heavy drug use as long as it's not unless it's going against the drug use. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we have Dare and we have Great, so those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah, like
is
if it's just
understandable.
facts and like stuff like
Mhm.
that, that's different. Instead of like what we can read in most libraries now, you can read about suicide and like you can read about drugs, you can read about sex, you can read about
Yeah.
pretty much
Which
anything you want.
which I think's okay.
I think for the most part it's okay, but I think there's some guidelines onto where it should be drawn. Like I don't think they should be banned for anything. I don't think they should be banned at all, but I think that like there is guidelines to where things can be too much.
Yeah,
But like,
too
so you want
vulgar
this,
and
but
direct.
who
Yeah.
decides whether or not it's too vulgar?
The state should decide.
But what if it's like a small case where, so they just decide every book, they go through every book and they decide this is not allowed.
Not every book, but books that have. Usually, books are like that. I don't know. You can look up comments. You can look at whatever. Like you can just
Yeah.
look at some things. Or like people do stuff over books.
Yeah.
You can find out if it's.
But
gonna
are
be
the-
bad or
Seems
not.
like
But
if
so
one
there's-
person has a problem with it, then a bunch of
Yeah,
people have
if
a
you
problem
have one
with
person
it.
that
Like,
has a
But if
problem,
there's
then it should be.
so you're saying the state gives the guidelines, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So how are the teachers, how do they follow those guidelines? Because they can't be
What do you
super,
mean?
super specific.
They just
Well, the
don't buy the
libraries-
books that
You
are
don't buy the books
not
that are
in the
even
guidelines.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they do that as it is, though. I feel like there are
yeah, but
guidelines,
that's
aren't there?
but that's what I mean is as long as there are guidelines. I think the thing itself is if banning books should be allowed or not at all. Like if you should shelter kids, like your original thing, and I think you should shelter kids.
I think you should. I think you should shelter elementary school kids, but I feel like teenagers to a point, you shouldn't shelter them as much.
I think we're sheltered more than you think we are.
Yeah, I feel like high school kids, like,
not in the way with books, though.
I feel like they're just sheltered, like, in life in general, because, like,
you go to the
when
same
you think
place
about
every
it,
single
you
day.
literally go to the same place. You don't have to pay for your house. You don't have to pay for your food. Most people don't have to pay for their car. All their clothes are given to them. And their parents have all control of them. Their parents have total control over them. Like, they don't have to make, like, very many grown-up decisions. Like,
yeah. I guess it's just hard because I just picture if somebody wants to read a book, they'll go find it anyway.
Yeah,
and so they're still not sheltered in that way.
But that could be with anything. That's like, that could be with a lot of things. Like, okay, we don't give it to you, but you could probably go find it if you wanted to. Like, that's with a lot of things. And I feel like it's just, as a school, you are trying to promote good things, and so why would you let them have access to it themselves? I know that they could probably still go find it, but it shouldn't come from the school.
What about a situation where one parent has a problem with a book? Like, nobody else complains about it. One parent has a problem with that book. Are you going to get rid of it from the library?
But then they should
some parents are way more strict.
They should send out a poll for parents, or like send out a letter to see if they. That's why I think
they should go to the school board
and ask more parents. Because then, because some parents are crazy too and throw dumb fits over dumb things.
I feel like in a situation like that, they should go to the school board. But like overall, for every school, I feel like the state should decide.
And if at the school board, if more parents have more thoughts, they're allowed to speak at the school board.
Yeah. And so then more parents can come up. If a lot of the parents are like, no, like I would let my kid read it, whatever. Well, then that parent's just gonna have to deal with it and get over it because majority won. Like,
and I don't think this is as huge of an issue as some people make it to be. Like, I don't think
it's that big an issue.
Huge like controversy about like, oh, this person or this school has a book, or oh, this school won't allow this book.
Yeah. So
what's your thoughts on like a general banning of books? Like, there's some countries that won't like allow books.
What time are we at?
Either.
I feel like this shouldn't be more than like 7 minutes.
12. Just keep going. You can cut it.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Well, the general idea of books, like there's
in a country.
Yeah, especially like during in the past mostly, like in war and stuff like that, countries weren't allowed to read certain books because it dealt with certain elements that went against their beliefs. Or like North Korea. Even.
I think that's dumb.
I think that's dumb. You should be able to read outside of public schools or outside of schools. You should be able to read whatever you want.
It's like the First Amendment, freedom of press, being able to
you should be able to
publish
read
any kind of books you want, being able to read whatever you want.
Yep.
Was it in like World War II where they used to burn the books because they're all banned and if you're caught with them, they burn all of them?
Yeah, communism books.
That's ridiculous because then that's forcing opinions and not giving people all the information. So I disagree with that. I think that's dumb.
Do you think it still happens today? I don't think so much in the U.S.
I don't think really in the U.S.
But I feel like in other countries.
North Korea,
maybe.
definitely.
Definitely.
But do you want to go and say kind of what all we think then? I think
we're pretty much on the same page. We just went around and around with the same thing over and over again.
I just think there should be guidelines.
Yeah. I guess just anything saying that the state has controls is a little scary. Like, just like saying it as a thought. Yeah, but like it makes sense. It's just like it has guidelines.
I think guidelines.
I think the way it is right now is pretty acceptable.
I think it's fine.
I think it's I
don't think we need to make huge changes until something.
I think there should just be like, as parents complain, and that's when more books get taken off. But like, it should be a majority vote by parents to the school board or something like that. Like, but the state should, I feel like, justify, like, I don't know. And then like, I think it should be up to the school. Reasons. It should be up to the school to tell the state like, hey, I'm having problems with this book. Like, it's gonna
come figure this out.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen.
Tune in next time.